Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, the host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show and thanks for listening. Before I introduce today's guest, I just want to take a quick moment to invite all you dads who are listening right now and who are ready to start taking action on becoming better dads, better men, to join our online community. The best way to do that right now is to apply to our private group, which can be found at fitdadnation.com/community. My guest today is someone I have a great deal of respect for in the fitness industry, and his name is Elliott Hulse. He's a strength and conditioning coach. He's the owner of Strength Camp, which is a gym in St. Petersburg, Florida. He's also an author and a speaker and a prolific content creator. He's also a family man with a wife and 4 children. However, he's probably best known for his YouTube channels, which have amassed more than 2.5 million subscribers, and he's created sort of a cult following in a good way over the years. And I've watched his stuff for quite a long time, and his kind of in-your-face approach to telling it like it is has worked incredibly well for him, and he's built multiple businesses on the foundation of what he's created. So I'm excited to have you here, Elliott. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me.
You got it. So, before we get into the interview here, I just wonder if you could maybe share a little bit about your backstory and kind of how you ended up becoming this kind of online superstar. You've got this massive following, and you're kind of everywhere on the internet. So I'd love to kind of hear how you got there.
I am a strength coach by profession, and I started my business Strength Camp in St. Petersburg, Florida when I was 24 years old after moving from New York with my wife and our 5-month-old daughter at the time. And so I worked as a personal trainer, but then, I wanted to train athletes. I played college football. I'm an athlete. So I started Strength Camp out of the back of my van here in St. Petersburg, Florida in 2005, 6-ish. And I was training people in the parks with trash. I filled up sandbags and went to the junkyards and got tires and started using strongman and odd object training with athletes and men mostly in the parks. And this was before strongman was like popular. Of course, like everywhere you go, there's a tire now to go flip, but it was really brand new. So I was making the videos of what we were doing at Strength Camp with the odd objects and equipment and being outdoors. And I was making the videos so that my members would share them with my clients, would share them with their friends and their families so that I would get more people to come, because it looks like fun. It looks like something that people want to do. Once somebody did one workout, they were hooked. So those videos, little did I know, I was putting them on YouTube, that I know that the whole world was watching, that, people were going to be watching and commenting from all over the world. And so I started answering questions for people. They would send me questions, comments and stuff like that. And I started answering them. And long story short, they became very popular. I would answer questions about how to get stronger, how to be the strongest version of yourself. I have a background in exercise science and physiology and holistic health. And so I brought a broad perspective to answering lifting questions, essentially. And so my advice got very popular. My channels grew very rapidly. And from there, like you said, I sort of I was able to build my business from that foundation of popularity online, which is kind of a new thing for this new generation, your guys are like 35 to 45, your listeners. So we grew up, without, there was no internet. I didn't even have an email address when I was in college. So like my sophomore year. So it's all kind of new stuff. It was wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've always kind of admired your no bullshit approach to, telling it like it just, your content is just straight to the point, and you're just being straight up with your community. And I think, people aren't stupid. They know when someone's not genuine. They know when someone doesn't actually care about them. And, just watching, and you have tons of videos, it's clear. I mean, you give a shit about these people. And because of it, yeah, you've got this extremely engaged following. And just looking through the comments and the different, media sources, I mean, it's pretty awesome to see that, because, this is an industry, as you know, filled with scammers and just people looking to make a quick buck. So I just love seeing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think you're kind of known as this fitness guy, right? And a lot of your videos are fitness based. And as you started, over the first few years, they started to evolve a little bit to, confidence and masculinity. And then, it's kind of branched out into something a lot bigger. I know you have now multiple businesses, and, it looks like your more recent stuff is kind of gone in a different direction. So I'd love to hear about, kind of what you're working on now that's more, I guess, personal growth oriented versus just, strength and fitness and that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm the oldest of three boys and a daughter. I was like the oldest and the strongest and the fastest. I was always like king of the boys growing up. I was around a lot of boys, and then I played football, and then I was getting ready to be an officer in the Marines. It didn't turn out that way, but instead I ended up becoming a professional strongman. And then I went out to be a personal trainer, and most of the clients that, even when I was in the gym and I wasn't like targeting particular types of clients, were men. Like, men were just attracted to, I guess, the way I am. And so that has been who I speak to for all these years, making videos, mostly men. And these past few years, I've realized that what I've offered men in general, in terms of, health and fitness and strength and confidence, is also mirrored by I've made myself almost as an avatar for what a lot of men aspire to be in all areas of their lives. I have a wonderful marriage, and I have 4 children. I'm a businessman, deeply spiritual. So all these other aspects of who I am just naturally come out in interaction. People ask me questions. All I can do is be honest about who I am and what, and how I live my life. And so as a result, I find myself today really as a mentor in helping men become the strongest version of themselves, which is a term that I've used since the beginning and I still live by. And that's really about being amazing in every area of our life.
Okay, yeah, and I know, like, this, I mean, we'll call it a masculinity movement. I know there are a few guys doing this, and it's definitely becoming more popular. And it looked like this grounding man, and you have this grounding camp, which I hadn't heard of until just recently, and I started watching your stuff. And, I want to hear about that, because that's such a powerful thing. It just runs so much deeper than strength training or anything like that, and you have a pretty unique perspective on it about the different types of men and I guess how to be your strongest man, and so I'm curious to hear more about that.
Well, I built Strength Camp up to minister and to serve men at the physical level, and the mental level. And the physical and the mental, it was very obvious, it's this is what I want to achieve. I have this vision for myself and my body and my health. And a lot of times it was kids that wanted to jump higher, run faster, lose fat, and get jacked. And I won a lot of trust in my ability to do that. I'm very good at that. I'm a very good coach. And as the questions that I received deepened, a little bit more was required of me in terms of mentoring to the spiritual and emotional aspects of what makes a man a man. Those are 2 parts of the 4-part equation: spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, that don't really get addressed in our lives as men. With women, it's a little bit different. They're emotional with each other. They get together and they have pity parties. And they're giddy, and so they do shit like that. Men, it's a little bit different, and it's appropriate. We are the way we are. But for us to tap into our spiritual healing, it is required that we confront our emotions and mainly our wounds and our pains, the things that keep us small, that allow us to keep ourselves small in life. So grounding camp is, I like to say, the sister or the arm. I don't like the word sister because it's like we're talking about women. And I kicked women out. At one point we were doing it with women. I could tell that story later. But it's all men now. But it's like the counterpart to strength camp. So grounding camp is where we get together as men and we work on becoming the strongest version of our spiritual and emotional selves. And so that's the big picture there.
Yeah. So in your videos, it almost looks like we're just you're reducing these guys to their primal basic instincts, where you're letting it all go, and it seems like that's something that's just not done. I mean, we don't do that, right? I mean, we're busy guys. We work, we come home, we have dinner, we go to bed. We don't do that shit. And I think, it has definitely a huge benefit. I did something like that, similar, years and years ago, and it was probably one of the most life-altering experiences I've ever gone through. So, just in watching that short video, I could tell that these guys, it was extremely impactful. So, I'm curious to hear about this. You have this kind of the chaotic man. You call it the chaotic man and the cowardly man, are like these two types of shadow men. And I'm interested to hear more about that and what that means and how we go about becoming, I guess, the man that we're meant to be or capable of being.
Well, human expression is through energy. It doesn't take much to figure that out. Like, you need energy to speak, to shout, to express yourself. And energy runs a spectrum, and it's as simple as saying there are high energy people and there are low energy people. And when you're around both, there are those people who are low energies to the degree that they even take energy being around them. It's like, oh God, this guy's a vampire. And then there are those who, I call that the far end of the spectrum, where, you're the depressive type character. And then there are those that we are hyperactive, ungrounded, hyper thinking, hyper speaking, just the complete opposite, more of an anxious nature than a depressed nature. And so what you're referring to is where I just point out that these two ways of being, these two ends of the spectrum for how we can show up as men, aren't written in stone. We don't have to remain this way and live a life that is either chaotic or cowardly. The man who doesn't take action because he's low energy, he's never going to speak to the girl. He's never going to ask for the raise. He's never going to start the business. There's always there's always something holding him back. But then on the other end of the spectrum, the guy that's chaotic, which I would tend to lean towards just by nature, always starting new projects and always thinking new things, always wanting to do something, flying for the sky, going, getting high. And as we know with Icarus, in Greek mythology, he flies towards the sun and he gets his wings burned up as he falls back to the ocean. So with this pendulum swing that we may recognize in our daily lives, or if we tend towards one or the other, they all can be. We can use these to our advantage, even, but more of what we're aiming for is the reason why I call it grounding is an opening up to a balanced way that allows us to be present in the moment and not hyper reactive, either negatively, like the depressed person, or the chaotic way. So we're looking for a integration, a balance, middle road for us to proceed in our lives from.
Okay. I mean, and that's kind of tied into what you call an embodied king, right? And I know actually that's the name of your book, right? King, 4-layer approach to becoming the strongest version of yourself. I mean, what does that mean? Like when you say embodied king, because I read that and I was like, I didn't quite get it. Like what exactly does that mean?
Well, all these things I'm talking about are just talk.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been trying to, in many different ways, deal with this with talk. Either if you go to a psychoanalyst or a coach, either that or chemicals. If you go to a psychiatrist, they're going to give you medication. All these things that are associated with, wanting to be something wanting to be our strongest version of ourselves. We don't actually go to the doing aspect of it. Very rarely do you enact or be the thing that you're, the you that you know that you can be. We talk about it, we think about it, we even feel about it, but very rarely do we express those ways of being. So, for example, oftentimes when people are angry and have a tendency to maybe road rage or kick your dog kind of angry, like just fly off at the handle, or just a mood even. A lot of times what's underneath there, you could say to yourself, I hope to stop this and I wish to stop this, and you remind yourself. But what's underneath that anger, oftentimes, I've seen it this way most of the time, is a tremendous amount of sadness and or fear. So before we can, in order for us to be fully embodied in our grounded self, we got to deal with the unresolved emotional issues that keep us hypnotized into behaving in robotic ways, in unconscious ways. And so with Grounding Camp and us working on the spirit is about being. I can go deeper into that, but the point is that spirit is about allowing, it's about being, it's about trusting, it's about Father, pattern, God. And the emotion is a lot about feeling. It's a lot about water. It's a lot about emotion. It's a lot about sensing and sensation. And so in order for us to get into that state of being where there's just stillness, just peace, just allowing, we need to purge or exercise, if you think of it as an exorcism. In many ways it looks and seems that way. These old trapped emotions that are a byproduct of old trauma experiences that we had as a child. And according to Wilhelm Reich, who's a student of Sigmund Freud, who brought us bioenergetics and other Neo-Reichian therapies, mind-body therapies, man, was a brilliant. He recognized that all psychological defense mechanisms are embodied. They're in the body. It affects the way you breathe, the way you stand, the way you look, So when I talk about the transformation process that we're bringing through with Grounding Camp, it's embodied. And that means we're talking, but we're not talking too much. We're doing, we're expressing, we're feeling, we're being.
Okay. So what does that look like for your average dad who's not going through Grounding Camp and understands the importance of what you just said and the role in their life? But I mean, even like me, like when you're saying this, I totally get it. I don't know where to start. I wouldn't know where even to start. Like I've never even taken the time to try to meditate. Like that whole part of my life is shut off, and I know it is for a lot of guys. It's just not really something that's you think about or really do anything about. So I'd love to hear how someone like me or a middle-aged, super busy dad goes about even embarking down that path.
Well, men learn by doing. Men learn by experience. The way we were taught in school is very passive. It's very feminine. We sit there and we receive, through the ears, holes in our bodies, like a vagina. When our ancestors understood that, well, first of all, the greatest teaching or undertaking that a man goes through are during these initiation phases of his life, where he goes from childhood to manhood. And so a tremendous amount, and then from manhood to middle manhood, and then middle manhood into eldership. But I'm just talking about our young people right now, and those of us who are dads right now. We're that middle part. I'd love to talk about that because that's where I've been working these past few years. But I remember being 24, and it's who I'm called to serve and to work with. So the initiation process, in order to give deep understanding through doing that our ancestors understood young men needed in order to tap into the visceral response, that knowing within the body that opens up the gateway for meaning in our lives, can't be delivered through a book. It can't be spoken about. It can't be understood by watching documentaries or YouTube videos. It must be undertaken as a physical rites of passage. And so when I created Grounding Camp, I knew that we were going into that realm of initiatory experiences that open men up to aspects of themselves that we didn't know were there, and to uncloudy our vision a bit so that we can see who we really are, and then create some meaning for where we are and where we're going in our lives. So that being said, it's a very physical and emotional experience. We're doing a lot. And one of the things that we're doing are Osho active meditations. Without going too much into who Osho is, he's a man that created some really powerful active meditations. Active meditations are meditations whereby we aim to achieve the same sort of stillness and silence that sitting meditation creates for us, but we do it through an embodied experience. There's a lot of deep breathing, there's a lot of shouting, there's a lot of emotional expression, and there's a lot of witnessing and watching ourselves. And so at Grounding Camp, we do a series of about 4 or 5 different Osho active meditations, including dynamic meditation. We do a lot of storytelling and dancing and a lot of music because it's not a whiteboard lesson. It's not school. We're getting uncomfortable so that we can access parts of ourselves that maybe we been hiding, so that in our comfort, in our day-to-day comfort.
Okay, so how would we, do we have to go through some kind of experiential process or program to start incorporating these types of things? Or something that you can even suggest for just somebody at home that maybe doesn't have the resources or access to go find a particular program or something like this that would actually get them really involved in it? Is that something that can be done?
Well, you're going to figure it out either way. Listen, you're being initiated. We're being initiated constantly, but there are big cycles in our lives. I see them as 12-year cycles in our lives, right around 14, 12, 12, 13, 14, between 12 and 15, there's a big shift. Whether you want to or not, you're being initiated. It's very obvious to see it then because a lot of our biology shifts and changes. The same thing at around 24, same thing around 36, and so on. And so what I'm describing to you are merely means by which we can start to make sense of those big changes as they happen in our lives, because no one makes sense of these changes for us any longer, unless they can, go to the military, or even then you have to create your own meaning for it. And to give you tools by which you can lessen the emotional burden of going through these things. So I attract a lot of 24-year-old men. It's amazing. I've been amazed. Every single event I go to, I say, 24-year-olds, raise your hand. And it's always a good percentage of 24-year-old men. They know something's happening. And that's usually when you seek an elder, you seek guidance. I don't know, everyone's different. But those of us who are opening up to our awareness and we know that something's wrong, Joseph Campbell calls it the hero's journey. There's a call to adventure. We live in a day and age now where people look, they can research, and they come across people like me who may be able to support them in a very confusing time. These ages, 24 to 27 is a very confusing time because you're ending one chapter and beginning another. And I'm empathetic. I speak about these things, and that's why a lot of people are attracted to me. I acknowledge this, and they're like, "How did you know?" Because I know. I've been initiated myself. I've been doing this myself to myself, and that's why I can bring it forward as a service. Now, your question about what can you do on your own? Well, I'll tell you what I did. I was lucky enough to come across Osho, and when I was 24 years old, reading his work, and was very interested in dynamic meditation, which was a form of meditation that he offered that it's very physical. I was an athlete. I'm an athlete. Very physical. A lot of breathing, a lot of physical expression, a lot of aerobics almost. It's nuts. I thought it sounded really cool, so I gave it a try. I did a 21-day workshop in New York City, back in 2004. And little did I know, I didn't know what I know now, but I realized looking back that was an initiation. That was that changed me energetically, physically, emotionally. All kinds of shifts happened to me in my life after doing that 21-day active meditation workshop. And I also did some private lessons with the instructor, and she began teaching me bioenergetics. And I can go into what that experience was like for me, but I can tell you it was deeply emotional, deeply transformative, very physical, and was like a launching pad for what my life became between the ages of 24 and 36. And you saw a lot of me in those YouTube videos. Big part of who I was and how I was able to express myself in that way had a lot to do with the practice of active meditation and bioenergetics. And so what I'm saying is these are things that you would practice or learn how to do.
Okay. I mean, is this tied into, you talk about building your soul versus building your body?
Yes, this is emotional work. And it's challenging to do on your own. I traveled the world these past few years working with masters. I spent a month in Berlin, Germany. I did 3 or 4 years of work with Bob Glazier, who was a neo-Reichian therapist, bioenergetic analysis. He was a student of Alexander Lowen, who was the creator of bioenergetics. I know this all might not mean anything, but I can go into the history of all of it. Also, I've been a student of neo-Jungian psychoanalyst Robert Moore, who wrote King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, about the masculine psyche, who was a Jungian. So what I'm saying is this is what I know. This has been my experience, and this is what I help facilitate for men that are going through an initiation. I couldn't do it by myself. I needed teachers, and I needed therapists, and I needed facilitators. And what I hope to be able to do is, of course, bring light to this for people so you can do your own research, read Osho, read the work of Alexander Lowen. I can point you to resources, or you can look around and try to find a bioenergetic analyst or someone who does Osho active meditation retreats. And then there's me. And this is what Grounding Camp is. And it's been a part of my mission and a part of my service to the world.
Wow. Okay. So, you've reached, millions and millions of people. I'd love to hear, what you think, like in your experience, we'll call them middle-aged dads, middle-aged men, 35, 45, 50. What are they lacking most in their lives as a whole? I know you've had so much experience with so many men, but I'd love to hear what kind of stands out, like in your opinion, in your experience, what are we missing the most right now?
Well, it depends on the person who you ask. They'll tell you they're missing different things, but the whole wake-up call around 35 is, Robert Bly calls it ashes. You begin to recognize the ashes laying around you from dreams unfulfilled, and you really begin to start looking around at your life, if you're aware and if you're an evolving person, and asking yourself deeper questions about how did I get here and why am I doing this and where am I going? And existential questions start arising. They call this a midlife crisis. And oftentimes, because it's the ending of an old, of a previous phase and the beginning of a new one, it's right there at that 12-year cycle. A lot of that initiation process draws up anxiety and depression, but it's because oftentimes we're holding on to things that we need to let go of during that time. Either they're immature and they no longer serve us, or they were just decisions that we made at a less wise version of ourselves. And some very big decisions are needed to be made around 35, 36 years old. And it can either be a recommitment to the things you've already started, or a big pivot into a brand new direction. And that type of chaos creates instability. And I don't have to explain, if you're in this age bracket, you either know what I'm talking about and you're nodding your head and you're like, yeah, I get it, or you haven't been there yet and you're just not ready. But the guys that are nodding their head and that know what I'm talking about, no one can warn you about that. No one can tell you anything about it. You go through it, and in a lot of ways, it's like a dark night of the soul. You're going through a tunnel, but it's a beautiful thing when you understand the implications of it, and there's some either good ideas or facilitators that are coaches that are there to support you through the process and let you know that it's an amazing thing. You're becoming a much smarter, much wiser, much more grounded in your truth man at that age.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that. In my experience, when guys get to be around 40 is somewhere in there, they're settled into life, right? They've got their career, they've got their family, they've got their mortgage, they've got their SUV payments, they have their dog, all that stuff, right? But then they wake up one day and realize, you know what? I don't really like this life that much. It's my job is meaningless to me. Like, there's no purpose or passion behind it at all, right? My marriage is so. It's just kind of going through the motions. It's just a fucking grind of a life, right? I went through it. I struggled through a marriage. I was divorced 6 years ago and reinvented my entire life and have changed a lot of things. But there's a lot of guys that, most of the guys that listen to this are married, and I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I know that there's a lot of men that are just kind of living day to day, right? And the one day they are going to wake up, they're going to be 75 years old, and they can't do shit after that. Like, you're done, right? Now is the time to take action, to start making things happen for yourself. And I know that you help people with this. You have this helping people with what you call non-jobs. And because you've been able to step out of the normal 9 to 5 and out of the normal box that we're supposed to be living in, and you created this crazy huge business that you've created for your life specifically, and you're living your passions and you're living your dreams, and now you're helping other people do that, and that is massively important. So I really want to hear about that piece of what you do.
Well, as I was building my online presence, once I realized that YouTube was taking off for me, and I had already started making ebooks and digital products and stuff, I just felt compelled to share. That's the way I am as a person and as a coach. So whatever it is that's working for me and whatever I'm going through, I assume there are others that it would be helpful to. So I started creating YouTube videos, and I called it the non-job revolution. And it, because the internet was so brand new, and I was, a pioneer in getting established through it before a lot of people. I realized I was one of the first. I just extended my support to those young men coming up who don't realize the opportunities that are available through the internet, and instead of thinking that they have to go down a certain path that may in their eyes look dark and daunting and confusing and unsettling and not right for them, to know that we live in an age where your options have expanded exponentially. And so I know some of the principles. I know how to do. I know about it, and so I began blabbing about it. And now it's crazy to see how it's taken off.
But you're specifically teaching it, right? I mean, you have courses and programs specifically to help people break out of their traditional jobs and create something that means something to them. And I haven't looked at the courses closely enough to know if you're talking about specifically online business, but that would be my guess, just because the barrier to entry is so low. And really, I think you can turn your passion, whatever it is, into a business, with the right tools and guidance. But is that what it's based on? Is it an online business type of, mentorship or program or coaching experience?
Yep. Yeah. It's just giving you the nuts and bolts, how to make that happen, make that work for you.
Okay. Do you find that there's a lot of guys, in that middle age range that are just desperate for something else and, don't know what to do? They feel trapped and stuck. And, a lot of guys have those golden handcuffs and they're looking for a way out. And they see someone like you, a busy dad of 4, and this guy's, living his dream. Why can't I do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the great thing is there's more than enough information out there about how to get started. I created a non-jobs revolution, and I've got my non-jobs ebooks and courses, and you can look on YouTube. I mean, that's there, but I'm by no means the expert or the go-to guy on this. I'm a spark, and so if you want to get started and you need some inspiration and some principles for how to do it and how to do it well, if it's time to make a change in your life, career is one way to go about it.
Sure. And I know you're known for having abundance of confidence, right? When you watch your videos, it's clear you just exude prowess and confidence. And so, a lot of the men that I work with, have kind of been beaten down over the course of time with whether it's a unsupportive spouse or it's a stressful career, all those things, right? Just they add up, and you just don't see they're not walking around with their head up high thinking, this is a great life that you see them in the grocery stores. They've got their heads down, they're moping along, and so I would love to kind of get your thoughts on, what are some things, because I'm not an expert in this by any means, but how do you go just, I guess, start down that path of let's start getting our confidence back. Let's start feeling better about ourselves, and everything changes once that confidence. I mean, as confidence plays a huge role in so much. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, the first thing I would invite you to do is to stop judging yourself. Lack of confidence comes from judgment, and judgment means that you are evaluating and having a feeling about either guilt or feeling shameful or for being who you are. And so my invitation is to love yourself unconditionally and be who it is you are in any given moment. Speak up, in other words, and then don't feel bad about speaking up. Make a decision that comes from your gut and don't apologize for it. Don't feel bad about it. You really just got to start trusting yourself. That's really where confidence comes from. It's trusting what I do, even if what I do or say seems crazy, because you as you've gone through this middle-aged transition, this initiation, and you had to shake some shit up in your life. You apparently have gone through divorces. So with a divorce, there had to be some big decisions that needed to be made, and you had to trust yourself, and you had to not judge. Other people might judge, and that could cause us to judge. So if you're going to make any headway, and there are those, if you're the depressive type, meaning the person who's not going to take action, you asked me about the two types of guys. The guy that's going to take action might take chaotic action. I'm the type of guy that might take chaotic action, meaning like I'm just going to go break everything. I'm just going to go nuts, like I did with a lot of things in my life. I just went and started with a sledgehammer and started smashing shit. But then the other end of the spectrum is if you're hesitating and you're slow to act, a lot of it has to do with judgment. And it's about other people's judgment, what they're thinking about you, and ultimately what you think about yourself. And you've got to re-brainwash yourself to love and accept yourself unconditionally, no matter what. And so that's paramount, or that's foundational to any type of confidence. Otherwise, that's coming from self-love. Anything else is coming from fear.
I know, obviously that's a big conversation. We don't need to get into that, but obviously that's a deep, deep conversation going down that path, trying to get to the bottom of some of this stuff. But I was just curious. I mean, I just see it so often, and I've struggled with it for many years for different reasons too. But yeah, so so I was looking at your recent content, and I came across this video where you've created this program called Hybrid Yoga, and so the whole mobility movement has blown up, right? Everyone's talking about mobility and moving better and flexibility, all these things, right? And so, I know you spent the last few years kind of steering away from strength training and really focusing on yoga and stretching. And I know you've said that you've lost some strength and some size. And so you've created this program that literally combines yoga, which we need, especially as we get up into our 30s and 40s and our bodies start to slowly fall apart from years of use and injuries, and you've combined that with strength training. So I want to hear about this program because it's very interesting to me.
Well, one of the things that I took the sledgehammer to when I saw this transition coming in my life was, and still is in many ways, to a version of myself that, first of all, I was a professional strongman. It was huge. At my biggest, I was 249 pounds. I'm 5'8". Just massive. I've always been highly identified with my muscle, my set strength, my size. I'm a fucking beast. And I've been a beast since I was a kid in kindergarten. I remember being in elementary school and I'd let kids punch me in the stomach for money. Like, yeah, you can't phase me. I'm just strong. So I was very much identified with that. And when this transition came about in my life, I knew that at an unconscious and a very conscious way, I knew that I needed to let go of this identification and this attachment. And so among many things, I began putting down the barbell. I stopped doing strongman training and I took up a new form of exercise, which is yoga. I had some muscle imbalances from injuries over the years. But these past few years really have forced me, due to a number of things, to really go deep into the exercise of yoga. I'm not a yogi. I'm not a yoga instructor. I didn't go to India. I just do follow-along yoga videos because they're really good workouts that include mind-body coordination, breathing, and movement. And they're circular, where lifting is very angular and very explosive. Yoga is very circular and very flowing. So it was like the complete opposite of what I've been used to. So for me, it was a challenge. It was something new. It was something I know that we become what we do. And so by doing it, it was going to facilitate my transformation process. And so the program is, as I'm coming out of one part of this rebirth, I recognize and I have a history with lifting. So I want to reintegrate it. I brought it back in and balance it with my newfound tool of yoga. And so, like I said, whatever it is that helps me or what I'm doing, I like to share with others. So I made some videos and programs. So it takes you 100 days, and every day there's an assigned yoga routine or a lifting.
Okay. I mean, I don't have to tell you. I mean, you've seen how important that is for guys as they age. And, I teach it constantly, but the issue is it's not sexy, right? I mean, it's boring. Guys don't want to do yoga. They don't want to sit quietly and move slowly, right? They want to go lift heavy shit. They want to push sleds. So, the message, it's hard. I don't know if it's the same for you, but yeah, I have a hard time.
No, I don't do sit down. No, it's what the yoga I do is it's vinyasa yoga. It's very active. I mean, it's circular and it's move. You're moving. You're gonna be sweating your balls off if you do one of my routines. It's a workout. Don't get it wrong. When I say yoga and I say meditation, I'm talking very active things. When I talk about the active meditations, you're going to be standing in a puddle of sweat when you're done meditating with me. And when I talk about yoga, I'm not talking about sitting cross-legged and breathing, which is great, which is cool stuff. It's just not where I haven't gone there yet with it. I'm not in that stage yet. I'm still very active. And I think most guys still are. We're not dead yet, So being active in our meditation, it's like Wilhelm Reich, who I mentioned earlier, really showed us how the mind and the body are one thing. And we can access states of consciousness. We can reinvigorate states of consciousness, wake up parts of ourselves physically through the body. And that's really what, when I'm doing yoga and meditation, we're going through the body.
Okay. And so you have a 100-day challenge. Is that right? That you incorporate this strength training and yoga into this?
Yeah.
How has that worked out for the middle-aged guy? Do you see a lot of guys coming to this?
I don't know yet. We just launched it. And so we're, only about 30 days into the 100 days. And so, as we start getting feedback, I'll know. I mean, it's been wonderful for me, and I can't wait to see the results that our guys are going to get.
Okay. All right. And I just wanted to ask you about one last thing. And it's something that I believe in strongly because I only work with men, with dads. And I've seen the power of a group or a tribe. And so I want to get your thoughts on what you've seen as far as experiences when you work with someone one-on-one versus getting a tribe of like-minded people together, kind of working towards the same thing. And I've seen it just change people's lives because of that. And because of that, that's all I do now. I only work in groups. But I'd like to get your thoughts on, your experience in working with tribes and why you think that it's, more effective or not when it comes to, personal growth and change and development.
Well, I recently started reading a book by Jack Donovan. I can't remember the name of it. It's his first book, though. The Way of Men. That's what it's called. The Way of Man. Anyway, in it, he made a really good point that men know what a man is by being around other men. There's no other way around it. For women, it's interesting because, in a lot of ways, biology and nature puts them in their place. It's just the way it is in biology. But with men, we're designed in a very different way, and we look outside of ourselves for who we are, and we're like a pack of wolves. And in order for us to really know ourselves, we see it in the reflection of the relationships that we have, namely with other men. And then it's about developing trust, and a lot of trust is tested. That's why men shit test one another and goof on one another, and because in our primordial man, we're hunter and gatherers, and we spent more time together, not in cubicles, but like out doing stuff. You had to know who had your back and who's going to be there, who's all talk and who's really going to step up. And so men tested men. Men would test each other. And if we don't get tested, we start believing our own bullshit, and we start getting really soft or, really detached from reality. So I think more so than anything, and I've experienced this both ways, when I'm a part of a team or a part of a group or a part of a club, I'm held accountable, and my bullshit is called on me, and or I can't show up with my bullshit because I know it's not going to fly. And because these are men that will speak up, and the same thing, vice versa. So it's critical to knowing who we are as men.
Yeah, agree, absolutely agree. So, one last question here. As far as where you want people to find you, I know you have a number of sites and social media channels, but and I'm happy to put them all in the show notes. But where would you like people to find you and more about what you do?
Putting my links there are great. ElliottHulse.com is kind of situated so that it's like a portal into everything I'm doing. Okay. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I will do that. And I appreciate your time. It's been great talking to you. I know you're super busy, so I do appreciate you spending this time with us.
You got it, Steve. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Base Camp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.